Okay, now welcome back to the third part of leadership. And the third part will be about contemporary leadership styles, but it's less theory. I'm only going to present two theories, and then the idea is that you really have to do a role play. I have never done this role play, number one. And secondly, I've never done a role play via an online session. So it's going to be an experiment if it's going to work, yeah? But what do you think, or what do you know about contemporary leadership styles? Any term you ever heard of? Do you know a contemporary leader? Who comes to your mind, number one? So each of you tells me one name. Nicole, you can start. Just one name, contemporary leader.
I'm sorry, I don't have any idea.
One leader you know?
Leader right in general or
in general?
Company?
In general. In general.
So like Trump, although he's not a good example.
Trump is a very good example.
Yeah, although not for good leadership.
Bill Gates, maybe.
Or Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs is tot.
Elon Musk. Sorry.
Maybe Elon Musk.
Okay. Who else? Say this again.
Dietmar Hopp.
Okay. Good collection. And let's start with Donald Trump. You said he might not be a good example. I think he is a very good example of a contemporary leadership style. And that's why I prepared already a video. Gehen wir mal da kurz hin. Okay. Can you see him? Yeah. So we're going to hear only briefly a recent speech. I just selected one. It's not that the content is important, but maybe you should write down on a sheet of paper what he is specifically doing when talking to an audience. So what, for example, is his voice, his gesture, the vocabulary he uses, the grammar. So maybe you find something in delivering the speech that I think he just did last week. And if I hope you can hear everything. If not, just say something.
Thank you very much. My fellow Americans, my first and highest duty as president is to defend our great country and the American people. I swore an oath to uphold the laws of our nation, and that is exactly what I will do. All Americans were rightly sickened and revolted by the brutal death of George Floyd. My administration is fully committed that for George and his family, justice will be served. He will not have died in vain. But we cannot allow the righteous cries of peaceful protesters to be drowned out by an angry mob. The biggest victims of the rioting are peace-loving citizens in our poorest communities. And as their president, I will fight to keep them safe. I will fight to protect you. I am your president of law and order, and an ally of all peaceful protesters. But in recent days, our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others. A number of state and local governments have failed to take necessary action to safeguard their residents. Innocent people have been savagely beaten, like the young man in Dallas, Texas, who was left dying on the street, or the woman in upstate New York viciously attacked by dangerous thugs. Small business owners have seen their dreams utterly destroyed. New York's finest have been hit in the face with bricks. Brave nurses who have battled the virus are afraid to leave their homes. A police precinct has been overrun here in the nation's capital. The Lincoln Memorial and the World War II Memorial have been vandalized. One of our most historic churches was set ablaze. A federal officer in California, an African-American enforcement hero, was shot and killed. These are not acts of peaceful protest. These are acts of domestic terror. The destruction of innocent life and the spilling of innocent blood is an offense to humanity and a crime against God. America.
Okay. Can just stop here. So, what did you notice?
He uses easy sentences and words, a very patriotic speech, very dramatic and heroic from his side. And he always looks left and right. I don't know if that's the crowd or some people he knows.
No, that's a prompter.
Okay.
They have the prompter.
Okay.
Obama was doing the same. So they have prompters on the left and the side. And when you just turn around, you always think that he's addressing the crowd.
Yes, that's what I
But in
thought.
reality, it's just reading from the two different prompters. But Obama did the same.
Okay.
Well, in this case, he's unusually tame, and so very unlike his usual persona. And yeah, he tries to appear very sympathetic, and well, he didn't actually threaten the people with the military. So for me, it's very fake. He also he talks
Don't
like
evaluate. Don't evaluate. It's just an analysis of his speech.
He's always he speaks so not quite, but on a normal level, unlike other times, and he's speaking very slowly. And after each sentence, he's breathing like it's very very straining to speak.
Okay.
I also,
yeah.
sorry. I also thought that when he speaks words that can be considered like heavy words, he speaks louder. So I think it's this what Tanya is saying about as well.
So he's.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Claudia. Yeah.
I think he's trying to addressing everyone. He's talking about Americans. He's talking about you should, or he's addressing nurses, or also God. So even the believers in the nation. Yeah.
So I think he's a very good example of a very specific kind of leadership style that he is showing. And when we talk about contemporary leadership styles, one second. Nochmal. Jetzt. So. Okay. So when it comes to contemporary leadership style, and we just saw this video, what he is actually doing, he is using a specific rhetorical technique, which is called frame. Yes? Any problems with this slide or? No. Okay. So which we call framing, using words to shape meanings and inspire others. A way to use language to manage meaning. Here on this picture, you see someone else. In contrast to Trump, I guess you all remember him from your English classes, where you had to read his speech. But the idea of this framing is that leaders use selectively including or excluding facts to influence how others see and interpret reality.
Is framing something?
Yeah.
Is framing something like manipulating, or is this something other again?
That's something other again. Manipulate. I mean, what comes out of this when you interpret it negatively, like when we think about Trump, that he's manipulating the crowd because he's talking about fake news and so on. But this slide, I tell you, I have it 15 years. And it just describes a technique that Trump uses, and not only Trump. All of the other very contemporary leaders use the same idea. Bolsonaro, even Mrs. Merkel, Macron, when we all think about political leaders, they use framing as selectively including or excluding facts to influence people. So, and this specific technique, framing, can be also trained. And when we look at it from a positive way, it's not called framing, but this specific leadership style is called, any idea? It's called charismatic leadership. Charismatic leadership style. So either we think Trump, okay, yes or no. What he's really doing brilliantly is using a charismatic leadership variation. So followers make attribution of heroic or extraordinary leadership abilities when they observe certain behaviors. So, and what all charismatic leaders have in common, and you said already, Elon Musk, Dietmar Hopp, Steve Jobs, all of these people are charismatic leaders, specific personalities that, number one, they have a vision. Let's think about Trump, I will make America great again. That's his vision. I mean, just wertfrei, without any barriers. When you analyze his idea, it's a great use of this leadership style. So have a vision. Secondly, he's willing, or these people are willing to take personal risks to achieve the vision. Think about Elon Musk. What is he doing? I mean, he's spending all of his private money in all of these weird ideas. He even gives the weirdest name to his newborn baby. Personal, I mean, can you imagine? Personal risks to achieve this vision, because future is Elon Musk's idea. They are sensitive to followers' needs. Even Trump is sensitive to his own followers' needs. Make America great again. And in the speech we just heard, think of the terrorists that run through the streets and all of the good nurses, they have to stay at home and so on. So he's sensitive to his followers, and they exhibit behavior that are out of the ordinary. And all of this fits not only to Trump, this fits to Musk, to Steve Jobs. Who named them? We have a couple of very interesting and what we call charismatic leaders. At Harvard Business School, they have extra classes to be trained in charismatic leadership. And it's not only that you have here the 4 points, it has something to do with rhetorics, and you just heard from Trump's speech, for example, and Marcel analyzed it correctly, that he's using very easy and easy words and short sentences, so the grammar is easy. So for example, that he reaches a larger crowd than someone else who has more intellectual terms in their rhetorics and so on. And Harvard Business School actually trains them, and they have even specific charismatic leadership trainings for females. Just search the internet, it's unbelievable. They have these extra classes where future female entrepreneurs are trained to be charismatic. So the key characteristics, let's go into this in more detail. To have a vision, expressed as an idealized goal that proposes a future better than the status quo and is able to clarify the importance of this vision in terms that are understandable to others. The personal risk, to willing to take a high personal risk, high costs, and engage in self-sacrifice to achieve the vision. When we think, for example, about Mrs. Merkel, and that they're all doing these night-long sessions. I mean, we are even tired after 3 hours of online lectures, yeah? And they're having these night-through sessions in the parliaments. This is definitely not healthy, but it's a personal risk they're all doing. Environmental sensitivity to make realistic assessments of the environmental constraints and resources needed to bring about change. And what, for example, is Trump doing is in America, is number one. We have to stick to this. Sensitivity to followers' need, that's what we said already. And to show unconventional behavior, to engage in behaviors that is perceived as novel and counter to norms. Again, look at here the source, 1998. Yeah, and now we have 2020. We have 2020. So it's really interesting that this charismatic leadership seems to be very successful in the long run. Either if you are Trump or someone else. Okay. So there is also something what scientists call the beyond charismatic leadership, the level 5 leaders. They possess something as a fifth dimension, which seems to be a blend of personal humility and professional will. So adding to all of these 4 leadership styles of individual capability, team skills, managerial competence, and the ability to stimulate others to high performance. And they channel their individual ego away from themselves and into the goal of building a great company, a great society, a great idea. And that's what we call level 5 leaders. Okay, out of this, the last theory that you're going to hear in leadership or leadership idea are out of the charismatic leadership style, these 2 leadership theories developed, and they are called the transactional and transformational leadership style. You know that we just had verbal exams in HR on Tuesday, and actually one of the students analyzed this development of transactional and transformational leadership styles towards the Corona situation. So is, for example, during Corona and home office situations, one of these different leadership styles more preferable or not? So let's start. The transactional leaders, as we call them, are in contrast to transformational leaders different. So transactional leaders, they are leaders who guide or motivate their followers in the direction of specific established goals by clarifying role and task requirements. We're going to see this a little bit more in detail later, but what they have is they give a contingent reward. They are doing management by exception. They are passive and active in this, and sometimes show also something like laissez-faire. In contrast to transactional leaders, there are transformational leaders, and the transformational leadership approach has something to do with I. And so the leader who provide the 4 I's, and I's means idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individual consideration. So all of these together makes the transformational leadership style. So again, to have a more close look at transactional leaders, for the contingent reward, they say that contracts exchange of rewards for effort, for promises, rewards for good performance, recognizes accomplishments, everything we know from goal setting, in companies, salary finding. This is contingent reward. And then the management by exception in active and passive ways. So active, they watch and search for deviation from rules and standards, or passive, they intervene only if standards are not met. And for the laissez-faire, they abdicate responsibilities and avoid to make decisions. In contrast, they focus more on task orientation, more on supervision, more on organization and performance, give and take relationship. So what they do is, they establish specific routines, they increase efficiency of established routines or procedures, and articulate, agree, and set goals, provide feedback, and reward the efforts. We all know the transactional managers. And here is now the famous model where you see the development of transactional and transformational leadership, because it has something to do with the efficiency and with more passive and active behavior. So when it comes here to transactional part, it seems to be helpful for people who are more passive, but the transformational part with the 4 I's, they seem to be the development of the transactional towards a more modern approach to leadership. And the idea is later in the role play that you use here the 4 I's, the individual consideration, intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation, idealized influence, to discuss a specific situation, just to prepare you for that role play. So the 4 I's. As a transformational leader with an idealized influence, they provide vision and sense of mission, instill pride, gain respect and trust. For the inspiration, they communicate high expectation, use symbols to focus efforts, express important purposes in easy and simple ways. For intellectual stimulation, to promote intelligence, rationality, and careful problem solving. And for the last I, the consideration, they give personal attention, treats each employee individually, coaches and advises. So this is in all of the books where it goes around leadership as one of the contemporary approaches to leadership, the transactional and the transformational leadership. And again, the 4 as a summary, the 4 I's help with the intellectual stimulation, the consideration, motivation, influence, to lead groups, to lead individuals, and to help to develop a more cooperative leadership form. Okay. So so leader specific behavior that results from these 4 I's can be, for example, to emphasize the the intrinsic motivation and the positive development of the employees or followers. They raise the awareness of moral standards. They highlight priorities. They foster higher moral maturity in followers. They create an ethnic climate, like to share values, high ethical standards, to encourage followers to look beyond self-interest, to promote cooperation and harmony, using authentic, consistent means, using persuasive appeals based on reason, provide individual coaching and mentoring for followers, and to appeal to the ideals of followers. Yeah? And again, because I love it, the big five also are used in leadership analysis. And here you see a correlation analysis with our big five from the NEO-FFI. The study from 2004, Personality and Transformation and Transactional Leadership in the Journal of Applied Psychology. And you see that for transformational leadership, all of our 4 positive personality variations have a positive correlation. And if neuroticism would have been termed to emotional stability, there would also be a positive correlation. So Jan, because you had the, and Marcel, you were so far the only group that did correlations, how do you interpret it, this correlation score? It's being a mind twice. What does it mean to have a positive correlation?
I think that one personality influences the other, or is yeah, they correlate. I don't know how to describe it. But we see that neurotourism isn't correlating with the other 4.
No, this is not an intercorrelation sheet. No,
or,
this is a correlation score between transformational leadership and personality traits. So the extent how you show transformational leadership correlates to minus 0.14 to neuroticism. So how would you interpret this? If you show transformational leadership,
and you don't have the trait
neurotourism.
Exactly. So if you show transformational leadership and it correlates with extraversion, you have a 0.78 correlation, which seems to be the highest here.
Sorry, does this mean the correlation is a match between both?
No, it means that there is a positive connection, not a match, but so if a transformational leader shows, as it seems, also higher, if they have higher levels in transformational leadership, they show higher levels in extraversion and not in introversion. Okay. Which is on extraversion, the other dimension. Yeah, in neuroticism, we also have it's a dimension, which means there is an opposite part, which means emotional stability. And they only used here the neuroticism part. But if you would have used emotional stability, there would have been a positive correlation of 0.14. So the more you show transformational leadership, the more extroverted you are, the more open you are, the more agreeable you are. Somehow the less the more conscientious you would have been. But it seems to be that the strongest part is here in extroversion. And this is not one study, this is what they call a meta-analysis. A meta-analysis means they use data from different studies, and it's actually a very complicated procedure doing a meta-analysis. And they briefly correlated all of these different studies to have this final sheet of paper here. But again, important only here is there seems to be a connection between personality and even transformational leadership. And I told you already a couple of times that specifically extraversion seems to be a very strong predictor for lots of things, not only for recruitment and for job success, even here for leadership style, that seems to be very helpful. So that's the main finding of this one. Okay, and because you said already Steve Jobs is important, here's one of his wonderful sentences. Management is about persuading people to do things they do not want to do, while leadership is about inspiring people to do things they never thought they could. So he was definitely a very charismatic and transformational leader. So you said already, although he's dead, yeah, Jan complained already, he died already, but he's still very important when it comes to analysis of leadership styles. And I think I also have a video of Steve Jobs' influence on Apple. Yeah, let me see. Yeah. I guess that's here. That should be here. Ja, okay. Da müssen Sie jetzt gleich schimpfen, wenn Sie da nichts hören. Das habe ich jetzt mit dem Tool noch nie ausprobiert.
With this data set, we wanted to try to do...
Did you hear this?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
3 key things. First of all, we wanted to explore the meaning of leadership for people in contemporary societies, and specifically the meaning of leadership coming from large corporations like Apple, which have an economic purpose in creating an emotional bond between the consumer and the company. We think that the data that we collected following Steve Jobs' death provides insight into that, because for any group of people, the death of one of its community is a key moment, both when emotions are articulated, but also when change is possible. We think that there has been change within the community of Apple consumers since 2011, when Steve Jobs died. There's also been a series of relatively clear changes within the organization. And the data set, or analysis of this data set, we think provides insight into both of those processes of change. The second thing we wanted to do in analysing this data set was to ask a series of critical questions, or perhaps to encourage followers to ask critical questions of themselves, of ourselves, in relation to the status and the emotion that we invest in leaders. Again, specifically leaders of commercial corporations such as Apple. The third aspect of analysis in relation to this data set was that we wanted to try to understand the contemporary nature of charisma. And charisma as a concept has been with us for more than 100 years. It was first developed by a German sociologist, Max Weber, who was analysing the development of religious organisations in Western Europe. It's been adopted within the field of leadership studies, but it's primarily been adopted as a means of understanding how charismatic leaders can transform organisations. And most of the research that's been conducted in that area has been based on questionnaire data sets and also on more functionalist analyses. So we wanted to try to provide something different in that respect. But the key thing is to bring the original idea of charisma as it was developed by Weber into the contemporary setting in secular organizations. So Weber was thinking and writing about religious organizations. There's a strong argument to say that religion has declined in its relative significance through the 20th century. But there's also an argument to say that other organizations, and therefore other leaders, have begun to, if not replace, then certainly to complement the role of leadership in societies. It would be glib to suggest that Apple is a religious organization and that Jobs could be understood as a religious leader. But both Apple as an organization and Jobs as a leader certainly manifest aspects of what we would expect religions and religious leaders to be in people's lives.
Yeah, interesting with the Max Weber connection. Okay, so then I would like to stop this topic. Someone left us in between. I just saw a chat. I think Letizia, is that sure that she's done? No. Okay. I would like now to start a role play. Yeah. So what I prepared is 2 sheets of paper in Elias, and I would like you to separate into 2 groups. And group number 1 will work on suggestion how a CEO is acting as a transformational leader, and you're going to have a couple of information about a specific situation. And the second group will work as a group who will help to prepare an employee to react in a certain situation. And so first of all, you prepare what the CEO and the employee should say, and then I would like us to try if this role play could work out here as an online variation. Okay. When we go to our advanced HR class, in exercises, I opened one folder which is called Role Play Leadership, and 2 sheets of paper. One is Role Play Leadership Transformational A, and the second one is Role Play Leadership Transformational B. And A is the CEO group. This will be group number 1, and B is the employee group. This will be group number 2. Okay, and please do not peek into the other slides. So when you picked as group number 1, pick only transformational A, and when you group number 2, just pick transformational B. Verständlich? Okay, so then let's try if this is gonna work. And I guess we will have more time for this exercise. So I think about 15 minutes to prepare the role play itself might be helpful. If not, just come back to me and ask questions.
So the whole group is the CEO later, and the whole other group
No,
is
you have to, no, thank you for asking. Now you should pick one out of your group who will do in the end the role play. But the whole group will prepare this role play.
Okay.
Yeah.
The finance manager, not as a head of internal auditing or quality control department. I never heard of, okay, I heard of that, but I never did this, and yeah.
Okay, but we have to say that, okay, just see.
No, it's okay. What do you have to offer me?
Okay, we have to say that, as I said, this opportunity for you will be not totally out of the practice that you have, and we can see that you have a good match with the company vision all these years. And also we want to say that you have to decide for yourself. And I want to say that as myself, as with my story about my before this position that I was also afraid about this, and was really scary for me when my superior said this for me, and I was insecure about what I will do in my next job. It was the same feeling as you, so I was also insecure, but I realized that now, and create similarities. I don't know how to say that with you, and I think you deserve the role because you are good for this position, and we are looking for a good decision for both sides.
Okay. So it's nice that you also has been in that position like me. But how is the right now? I have a good working relationship with the head of my department, not the new department, and my immediate boss, and with my colleagues, and the sense of camaraderie is very good in my position right now. So I don't know the new department, and I know maybe I'm the good person for it, but I don't think that the Umfeld, I don't know, the other people, the environment in this department is the right for me. And I don't know if you can tell me this, because I don't think you had the same way. Maybe your position in the past was a little bit better for you than now. For my change from finance manager to quality control, that's I think very different.
Yes, of course, I can understand that. Yeah, my last position was not so much, was the same feeling. And we just want to know and say for you that we can give you some days, and if you have a final decision, it's okay, it's up to you. We would like to really talk about more talk more about this. If you wanna, just feel open for say it, and if you have something to say.
No, I don't have much to say. I'm still not sure if I should do the step, but I appreciate that you offer me a lot of help. It sounds like you offer me a lot of help to get in this position. My question is it possible that in future I want to grow in the field of finance manager? I don't want to be forever head of internal auditing or quality control department. Is it possible to get back or get in a position that is a little bit like the finance manager thing in future, and not or is it forever?
No, I think nothing is forever, and you have good opportunities in this company. As I said, we are 10 years very happy with your participation here, and we trust you in our team, and we would like to give you this opportunity, and in the future we can talk about more positions, and if you continue to show as how much good you are all these 10 years, I think will be a good idea to have you. Yeah.
Okay, so in maybe if I don't like the position, or I don't feel comfortable in this position, I could go back. So that's not a problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess that this can be a problem for us as our company, we deal with the employees' happiness. So we hope that all our employees is happy with our own position, and we just wanted to press with this.
Okay. Okay, I have to think about it, of course. I can't tell yes or no right now, but I still appreciate the offer, and I'm a little bit flattered, of course, but yeah.
Oh, okay, no problem. It's up to you. In your time, you can come to talk to me. We are open for this decision.
I can't give any promises.
No, no problem. No problem. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well done. Okay. So, was it difficult? Do you think you, let's start with group number 1, the CEO group around Laura. Was it difficult?
In the beginning was a little bit difficult to make the ideas, and then we got a model to how to follow the conversation. And I think was a little bit out, but it's okay.
Okay. And group B around John?
I don't want it. Okay, insider. I think it's funny to do some role plays like this, but for me it's a little bit strange to follow tasks that aren't my opinion. I wouldn't do that like the person I play would do that. But I think Laura did it very good, because in our task it was like it was written that she should use that tactics she used, be very understandful and very empathic, and I think in future I could, John would say, yes, I could try the position. If it doesn't, if I don't like this, I would go back to the finance manager thing, but maybe I will enjoy it. I don't know. It was good that she doesn't came with something like, yeah, that's a higher position or more money or something, because that would be upturn.
Okay. So when we go to the description, this is now the role play for Group A, for the CEO. And what I liked in this description was that you tried to follow here the 4 eyes. Was there one of the 4 eyes where you thought this is more complicated than the others for both groups? Or was everything equal easy? Alles gleich. Marcel, come on.
What was the question again?
So the question was, because you had to follow here the 4 eyes: idealized influence, inspiration and motivation, intellectual stimulation, individualized consideration. Was one of them easier than the others or more complicated?
So we thought, what could the CEO say to us? Idealized influence, for example, was easy. I think we we predicted that correct, that he would, or the lawyer would say something like, yeah, I also did a position I didn't like, but in the end it helped me. The other parts, that was the easiest one.
Okay, good. So thank you very much. First role play ever. It would have been even cooler if we would have seen only the two representatives of each group, yeah? But I don't know how to organize this, I must admit. I think it's not possible with you. But thank you very much for the taking part. Okay, so this was it for today for leadership. Do you have any questions?
Next week we have another, or what was this, the last one?
This was the last one.
Okay.